The Fourth Book of the Odysseys of Homer, Part 2. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Phil Schempf. The Fourth Book of the Odysseys of Homer, Part 2. Translated by George Chapman. I was in Egypt, where a mighty time The Gods detain'd me, though my natural clime I never so desir'd, because their homes I did not greet with perfect hecatombs. For they will put men evermore in mind How much their masterly commandments bind. There is, besides, a certain island, call'd Pharos, that with the high wav'd sea is wall'd, just against Egypt, and so much remote, As in a whole day, with a foregale smote, A hollow ship can sail. And this isle bears a port most portly, where sea passengers put in still For fresh water, and away to sea again. Yet here the Gods did stay my fleet full 20 days. The winds, that are masters at sea, no prosperous puff would spare to put us off, and all my victuals here had quite corrupted, as my men's minds were, had not a certain Goddess giv'n regard, and pitied me in an estate so hard. And 'twas Idothea, honour'd Proteus' seed, that old sea farer. Her mind I make bleed with my compassion, when, walk'd all alone, from all my soldiers that were ever gone About the isle on fishing with hooks bent, Hunger their bellies on her errand sent, she came close to me, spake, and thus began: "Of all men thou art the most foolish man, Or slack in business, or stay'st here of choice, And dost in all thy suff'rances rejoice, That thus long liv'st detain'd here, and no end Canst give thy tarriance. Thou dost much offend The minds of all thy fellows." I replied: "Whoever thou art of the Deified, I must affirm, that no way with my will I make abode here, but it seems some ill The Gods, inhabiting broad heav'n, sustain Against my getting off. Inform me then, For Godheads all things know, what God is he That stays my passage from the fishy sea?" "Stranger," said she, "I'll tell thee true, There lives an old sea farer in these seas, That gives a true solution of all The secrets here, who deathless Proteus is, The Egyptian peer, who can the deeps Of all the seas exquire, who Neptune's priest is, And, they say, the sire that did beget me. Him if any way thou couldst inveigle, He would clear display thy course from hence, And how far off doth lie Thy voyage's whole scope through Neptune's sky, Informing thee, O God preserv'd, beside, If thy desires would be so satisfied, Whatever good or ill hath got event, In all the time thy long and hard course spent Since thy departure from thy house." This said, again I answer'd: "Make the sleights display'd Thy father useth, lest his foresight see, Or his foreknowledge take note of me. He flies the fix'd place of his us'd abode, 'Tis hard for man to countermine with God." She straight replied: "I utter truth in all. When heav'n's supremest height the sun doth skall, The old sea tell truth leaves the deeps, and hides Amidst a black storm, when the west wind chides In caves still sleeping. Round about him sleep, With short feet swimming forth the foamy deep, The sea calves, lovely Halcyonës call'd, From whom a noisome odour is exhal'd, Got from the whirlpools on whose earth they lie. Here, when the morn illustrates all the sky, I'll guide, and seat thee in the fittest place For the performance thou hast now in chase. In mean time reach thy fleet, and choose out 3 Of best exploit, to go as aids to thee. But now I'll show thee all the old God's sleights. He first will number, and take all the sights Of those his guard, that on the shore arrives; When, having view'd, and told them forth by fives, He takes place in their midst, and there doth sleep, Like to a shepherd midst his flock of sheep. In his first sleep, call up your hardiest cheer, Vigour, and violence, and hold him there, In spite of all his strivings to be gone. He then will turn himself to every one Of all things that in the earth creep and respire. in water swim, or shine in heav'nly fire. Yet still hold you him firm, and much the more press him from passing. But when, as before, when sleep first bound his pow'rs, his form ye see, then cease your force, and the old heroë free, and then demand which heav'n born it may be that so afflicts you, hind'ring your retreat, and free sea passage to your native seat." This said, she div'd into the wavy seas, and I my course did to my ships address, that on the sands struck, where arriv'd, we made our supper ready. Then the ambrosian shade of night fell on us, and to sleep we fell. Rosy Aurora rose, we rose as well, and three of them, on whom I most relied, for firm at every force, I choos'd, and hied straight to the many river servéd seas, and all assistance ask'd the Deities. Meantime Idothea the sea's broad breast embrac'd, and brought for me, and all my rest, 4 of the sea calves' skins, but newly flay'd, to work a while, which she fashioned upon her father. Then within the sand, a covert digging, when these calves should land, she sat expecting. We came close to her, she plac'd us orderly, and made us wear each one his calf's skin. But we then must pass a huge exploit. The sea calves' savour was so passing sour, they still being bred at seas, it much afflicted us. For who can please to lie by one of these same sea bred whales? But she preserves us, and to memory calls a rare commodity. She fetch'd to us ambrosia, that an air most odorous bears still about it, which she nointed round our either nostrils, and in it quite drown'd the nasty whale smell. Then the great event, the whole morn's date, with spirits patient we lay expecting. When bright noon did flame, forth from the sea in shoals the sea calves came, and orderly at last lay down and slept along the sands. And then the old sea God crept from forth the deeps, and found his fat calves there, survey'd and number'd, and came never near the craft we us'd, but told us 5 for calves. His temples then diseas'd with sleep he salves, and in rush'd we, with an abhorred cry, cast all our hands about him manfully. And then the old forger all his forms began. First was a lion with a mighty mane, then next a dragon, a pied panther then, a vast boar next, and suddenly did strain all into water. Last he was a tree, curl'd all at top, and shot up to the sky. We with resolv'd hearts held him firmly still, when the old one, held too strait for all his skill to extricate, gave words, and question'd me. "Which of the Gods, O Atreus' son," said he, "advis'd and taught thy fortitude this sleight, to take and hold me thus in my despite?" "What asks thy wish now?" I replied. "Thou know'st. Why dost thou ask? What wiles are these thou show'st? I have within this isle been held for wind a wondrous time, and can by no means find an end to my retention. It hath spent the very heart in me. Give thou then vent to doubts thus bound in me. Ye Gods know all. Which of the Godheads doth so foully fall On my addression home, to stay me here, Avert me from my way, the fishy clear Barr'd to my passage?" He replied: "Of force, if to thy home thou wishest free recourse, To Jove and all the other Deities Thou must exhibit solemn sacrifice, And then the black sea for thee shall be clear, Till thy lov'd country's settled reach. But where ask these rites thy performance? 'Tis a fate to thee, and thy affairs appropriate, That thou shalt never see thy friends, nor tread Thy country's earth, nor see inhabited Thy so magnificent house, till thou make good Thy voyage back to the Egyptian flood, Whose waters fell from Jove, and there hast giv'n To Jove and all Gods hous'd in ample heav'n Devoted hecatombs, and then free ways Shall open to thee, clear'd of all delays." This told he, and methought he brake my heart, In such a long and hard course to divert My hope for home, and charge my back retreat As far as Egypt. I made answer yet: "Father, thy charge I'll perfect; but before Resolve me truly, if their natural shore All those Greeks and their ships do safe enjoy, That Nestor and myself left, when from Troy We first rais'd sail; or whether any died At sea a death unwish'd; or satisfied, When war was past, by friends embrac'd, in peace Resign'd their spirits. He made answer: "Cease To ask so far. It fits thee not to be So cunning in thine own calamity, Nor seek to learn what learn'd thou shouldst forget. Men's knowledges have proper limits set, And should not prease into the mind of God; But 'twill not long be, as my thoughts abode, Before thou buy this curious skill with tears. Many of those, whose states so tempt thine ears, Are stoop'd by death, and many left alive, One chief of which in strong hold doth survive Amidst the broad sea. 2 in their retreat Are done to death. I list not to repeat Who fell at Troy. Thyself was there in fight. But in return swift Ajax lost the light In his long oar'd ship. Neptune yet awhile Saft him wrack'd to the Gyræan isle, A mighty rock removing from his way. And surely he had 'scap'd the fatal day In spite of Pallas, if to that foul deed He in her fane did, when he ravished The Trojan prophetess, he had not here Adjoin'd an impious boast, that he would bear, Despite the Gods, his ship safe through the waves Then rais'd against him. These impious braves When Neptune heard, in his strong hand he took His massy trident, and so soundly strook The rock Gyræan that in two it cleft, Of which one fragment on the land he left, The other fell into the troubled seas. At which first rush'd Ajax Oïleades, And split his ship, and then himself afloat Swum on the rough waves of the world's vast moat, Till having drunk a salt cup for his sin, There perish'd he. Thy brother yet did win The wreath from death, while in the waves they strove, Afflicted by the rev'rend wife of Jove. But when the steep mount of the Malian shore He seem'd to reach, a most tempestuous blore, Far to the fishy world that sighs so sore, Straight ravish'd him again as far away As to the extreme bounds where the Agrians stay, Where first Thyestes dwelt, but then his son Ægisthus Thyestides liv'd. This done, when his return untouch'd appear'd again, Back turn'd the Gods the wind, and set him then Hard by his house. Then, full of joy, he left His ship, and close to his country earth he cleft, Kiss'd it, and wept for joy, pour'd tear on tear, To set so wishedly his footing there. But see, a sentinel that all the year Crafty Ægisthus in a watch tow'r set, To spy his landing, for reward as great As 2 gold talents, all his pow'rs did call To strict remembrance of his charge, and all Discharg'd at first sight; which at first he cast On Agamemnon, and with all his haste Inform'd Ægisthus. He an instant train Laid for his slaughter. 20 chosen men Of his plebeians he in ambush laid. His other men he charg'd to see purvey'd A feast, and forth, with horse and chariots grac'd, He rode t' invite him, but in heart embrac'd Horrible welcomes, and to death did bring With treach'rous slaughter the unwary king. Receiv'd him at feast, and, like an ox Slain at his manger, gave him bits and knocks. No one left of Atrides' train, Nor one save to Ægisthus, but himself Alone. All strew'd together there the bloody court. This said, my soul he sunk with his report. Flat on the sands I fell. Tears spent their store. I light abhorr'd. My heart would live no more. When dry of tears, and tir'd of tumbling there, The old tell truth thus my daunted spirits did cheer: "No more spend tears nor time, O Atreus' son, With ceaseless weeping never wish was won. Use utmost assay to reach thy home, And all unawares upon the murderer come, For torture, taking him thyself alive; Or let Orestes, that should far outstrive Thee in fit vengeance, quickly quit the light Of such a dark soul, and do thou the rite Of burial to him with a funeral feast." With these last words I fortified my breast, in which again a generous spring began Of fitting comfort, as I was a man. But as a brother I must ever mourn. Yet forth I went, and told him the return Of these I knew; but he had nam'd a third, Held on the broad sea, still with life inspir'd, Whom I besought to know, though likewise dead, And I must mourn alike. He answered: "He is Laertes' son, whom I beheld In nymph Calypso's palace, who compell'd His stay with her; and since he could not see His country earth, he mourn'd incessantly. For he had neither ship instruct with oars, Nor men to fetch him from those stranger shores. Where leave we him, and to thyself descend, Whom not in Argos fate, nor death shall end, But th' immortal ends of all the earth, So rul'd by them that order death by birth. The fields Elysian fate to thee will give, Where Rhadamanthus rules, and where men live A never troubled life; where snow nor show'rs No irksome winter spends his fruitless plow'rs, But from the ocean zephyr still resumes A constant breath, that all the fields perfumes; Which since thou marriedst Helen, are thy hire, And Jove himself is by her side thy sire." This said, he div'd the deepsome watery heaps. I and my tried men took us to our ships, And worlds of thoughts I varied with my steps. Arriv'd and shipp'd, the silent solemn night And sleep bereft us of our visual light. At morn, mast, sails rear'd, we sat, left the shores, And beat the foamy ocean with our oars. Again then we the Jove fall'n flood did fetch, As far as Egypt, where we did beseech The Gods with hecatombs; whose anger ceas'd, I tomb'd my brother that I might be blest. All rites perform'd, all haste I made for home, And all the prosp'rous winds about were come. I had the passport now of ev'ry God, And here clos'd all these labours' period. Here stay then till the 11th or 12th day's light, And I'll dismiss thee well, gifts exquisite, Preparing for thee chariot, horses 3, A cup of curious frame to serve for thee To serve th' immortal Gods with sacrifice, Mindful of me while all suns light thy skies." He answer'd: "Stay me not too long time here, Though I could sit attending all the year. Nor should my house nor parents with desire Take my affections from you, so on fire With love to hear you are my thoughts. But so my Pylian friends I shall afflict with woe, Who mourn'd ev'n this stay. Whatsoever be The gifts your grace is to bestow on me, Vouchsafe them such as I may bear and save For your sake ever. Horse I list not have, To keep in Ithaca, but leave them here, To your soil's dainties, where the broad fields bear Sweet cypress grass, where men fed Lote doth flow, Where wheat like spelt, and wheat itself doth grow, Where barley, white, and spreading like a tree. But Ithaca hath neither ground to be, For any length it comprehends, a race To try a horse's speed, nor any place To make him fat in; fitter far to feed A cliff bred goat, than raise or please a steed. Of all isles, Ithaca does least provide Or meads to feed a horse, or ways to ride." He smiling said: "Of good blood thou art, son. What speech so young? What observation hast thou made of the world? I well am pleas'd to change my gifts to thee, As being confess'd unfit indeed. My store is such I may. Of all my house gifts then, that up I lay For treasure there, I will bestow on thee The fairest and of greatest price to me. I will bestow on thee a rich carved cup, Of silver all, but all the brims wrought up With finest gold. It was the only thing That the heroical Sidonian king Presented to me, when we were to part At his receipt of me. And 'twas the art Of that great artist that of heav'n is free. And yet ev'n this will I bestow on thee." This speech thus ended, guests came, and did bring Muttons for presents to the godlike king, And spirit prompting wine that strenuous makes. Their ribbon'd wreath'd wives brought fruit and cakes. Thus in this house did these their feast apply, And in Ulysses' house activity The Wooers practis'd, tossing of the spear, The stone, and hurling. Thus delighted, where they exercis'd such insolence before, even in the court that wealthy pavements wore, Antinous did still their strifes decide, and he that was in person deified Eurymachus, both ringleaders of all, for in their virtues they were principal. These by Noëmon, son to Phronius, were sided now, who made the question thus: "Antinous, does any friend here know when this Telemachus returns, or no, from sandy Pylos? He may bold to take my ship with him, of which I now should make fit use myself, and sail in her as far as spacious Elis, where of mine there are 12 delicate mares, and under their sides go laborious mules, that yet did never know the yoke nor labour, some of which should bear the taming now, if I could fetch them there." This speech the rest admir'd, nor dream'd that he Neleïan Pylos ever thought to see, but was at field about his flock's survey, or thought his herdsman held him so away. Eupitheus' son Antinous then replied: "When went he, or with what train dignified? Of his selected Ithacensian youth? Press'd men or bondmen were they? Tell the truth, Could he effect this? Let me truly know, To gain thy vessel did he violence show, And us'd her 'gainst thy will? Or had he her free, When fitting question he had made with thee?" Noëmon answer'd: "I did freely give My vessel to him. Who deserves to live That would do other, when such men as he Did in distress ask? He should churlish be That would deny him. Of our youth the best Amongst the people, to the interest His charge did challenge in them, giving way With all the tribute all their pow'rs could pay. Their captain, as he took the ship, I knew Who Mentor was, or God, a Deity shew Mask'd in his likeness. But to think 'twas he I much admire, for I did clearly see But yestermorn God like Mentor here. Yet the other evening he took shipping there, And went for Pylos. Thus he went for home, And left the rest with envy overcome, Who sat, and pastime left. Eupitheus' son, sad, and with rage his entrails overrun, His eyes like flames, thus interpos'd his speech: "Strange thing! An action of how proud a reach Is here committed by Telemachus, A boy, a child, and we, a sort of us, Vow'd 'gainst his voyage, yet admit it thus, With ship and choice youth of our people too. But let him on, and all his mischief do. Jove shall convert upon himself his pow'rs, Before their ill presum'd he brings on ours. Provide me then a ship, and 20 men To give her manage, that, against again He turns for home, on the Ithacensian seas, Or cliffy Samian, I may interprease, Waylay, and take him, and make all his craft Sail with his ruin for his father's saft." This all applauded, and gave charge to do, Rose, and to greet Ulysses' house did go. But long time pass'd not ere Penelope Had notice of their far fetch'd treachery. Medon the herald told her, who had heard Without the hall how they within conferr'd, And hasted straight to tell it to the queen, Who, from the entry having Medon seen, Prevented him thus: "Now, herald, what affair Intend the famous Wooers in your repair? To tell Ulysses' maids that they must cease From doing our work, and their banquets dress? I would to heav'n, that, leaving wooing me, Nor ever troubling other company, Here might the last feast be, and most extreme That ever any shall address for them. They never meet but to consent in spoil, And reap the free fruits of another's toil. O did they never, when they children were, What to their fathers was Ulysses here, Who never did 'gainst any one proceed With unjust usage, or in word or deed. 'Tis yet with other kings another right, One to pursue with love, another spite. He still yet just, nor would, though might, devour, Nor to the worst did ever taste of pow'r. But their unruled acts show their minds' estate. Good turns receiv'd once, thanks grow out of date." Medon, the learned in wisdom, answer'd her: "I wish, O queen, that their ingratitudes Were their worst ill towards you. But worse by far, And much more deadly their endeavours are, Which Jove will fail them in. Telemachus their purpose is, as he returns to us, to give their sharp steels in a cruel death; who now is gone to learn if Fame can breathe news of his sire, and will the Pylian shore And sacred Sparta in his search explore." This news dissolv'd to her both knees and heart. Long silence held her, ere one word would part. Her eyes stood full of tears, her small soft voice All late use lost, that yet at last had choice Of wonted words; which briefly thus she us'd: "Why left my son his mother? Why refus'd His wit the solid shore, to try the seas, And put in ships the trust of his distress, That are at sea to men unbridled horse, And run, past rule, their far engaged course, Amidst a moisture past all mean unstay'd? No need compell'd this. Did he it, afraid To live and leave posterity his name?" "I know not," he replied, "if the humour came From current of his own instinct, or flow'd From others' instigations. But he vow'd Attempt to Pylos, or to see descried His sire's return, or know what death he died." This said, he took him to Ulysses' house, After the Wooers. The Ulyssean spouse, Run through with woes, let torture seize her mind, Nor in her choice of state chairs stood inclin'd To take her seat, but the abject threshold chose Of her fair chamber for her loath'd repose, And mourn'd most wretch like. Round about her fell Her handmaids, join'd in a continuate yell. From ev'ry corner of the palace, all Of all degrees tun'd to her comfort's fall Their own dejections; to whom her complaint She thus enforc'd: "The Gods, beyond constraint Of any measure, urge these tears on me; Nor was there ever dame of my degree So past degree griev'd. First, a lord so good, That had such hardy spirits in his blood, That all the virtues was adorn'd withal, That all the Greeks did their superior call To part with thus and lose; and now a son, So worthily belov'd, a course to run Beyond my knowledge, whom rude tempests have made Far from home his most inglorious grave. Unhappy wenches, that no one of all, Though in the reach of ev'ry one must fall His taking ship, sustain'd the careful mind, To call me from my bed, who this design'd, And most vow'd course in him had either stay'd, How much soever hasted, or dead man laid, He should have left me. Many a man I have, that would have call'd old Dolius my slave, That keeps my orchard, whom my father gave At my departure, to have run and told Laertes this, to try if he could hold From running through the people, and from tears, In telling them of these vow'd murderers, That both divine Ulysses' hope, and his Resolve to end in their conspiracies." His nurse then, Euryclea, made reply: "Dear sov'reign, let me with your own hands die, Or cast me off here. I'll not keep from thee One word of what I know. He trusted me With all his purpose, and I gave him all The bread and wine for which he pleas'd to call. But then a mighty oath he made me swear, Not to report it to your royal ear Before the 12th day either should appear, Or you should ask me, when you heard him gone. Impair not then your beauties with your moan, But wash, and put untear stain'd garments on. Ascend your chamber with your ladies here, And pray the seed of goat nurs'd Jupiter, Divine Athenia, to preserve your son, And she will save him from confusion. The old king, to whom your hopes stand so inclin'd For his grave counsels, you perhaps may find Unfit affected, for his age's sake. But heav'nly kings wax not old, and therefore Make fit pray'rs to them; for my thoughts never will Believe the heav'nly pow'rs conceit so ill The seed of righteous Arcesiades, To end it utterly, but still will please In some place evermore some one of them To save, and deck him with a diadem, Give him possession of erected tow'rs And far stretch'd fields, crown'd all of fruits and flow'rs." This eas'd her heart, and dried her hum'rous eyes, When having wash'd, and weeds of sacrifice Pure and unstain'd with her distrustful tears Put on, with all her women ministers, Up to a chamber of most height she rose, And cakes of salt and barley did impose Within a wicker basket; all which broke In decent order. Thus she did invoke: Great Virgin of the Goat preservéd God, If ever the inhabited abode Of wise Ulysses held the fatted thighs Of sheep and oxen, made thy sacrifice By his devotion, hear me, nor forget His pious services, but safe see set His dear son on these shores, and banish hence These Wooers past all mean and insolence." This said, she shriek'd, and Pallas heard her pray'r. The Wooers broke with tumult all the air About the shady house; and one of them, Whose pride his youth had made the more extreme, Said, "Now the many Wooer honour'd queen Will surely satiate her delayful spleen, And one of us in instant nuptials take. Poor dame, she dreams not what design we make Upon the life and slaughter of her son." So said he; but so said was not so done. Whose arrogant spirit in a vaunt so vain Antinous chid, and said: "For shame, contain These braving speeches. Who can tell who hears? Are we not now in reach of others' ears? If our intentions please us, let us call Our spirits up to them, and let speeches fall. By watchful danger men must silent go. What we resolve on, let's not say, but do." This said, he choos'd out 20 men, That bore best reckoning with him, and to ship and shore all hasted, reach'd the ship, launch'd, rais'd the mast, put sails in, and with leather loops made fast the oars. Sails hoisted, arms their men did bring, All giving speed and form to everything. Then to the high deeps their rigg'd vessel driven, They supp'd, expecting the approaching even. Mean space Penelope her chamber kept, And bed, and neither eat, nor drank, nor slept. Her strong thoughts wrought so on her blameless son, Still in contention, if he should be done To death, or 'scape the impious Wooers' design. Look how a lion, whom men troops combine To hunt, and close him in a crafty ring, Much varied thought conceives, and fear doth sting For urgent danger. So far'd she, till sleep All juncture of her joints and nerves did steep In his dissolving humour. When, at rest, Pallas her favours varied, when address'd An idol, that Iphthima did present, In structure of her ev'ry lineament, Great soul'd Icarius' daughter, whom for spouse Eumelus took, that kept in Pheres' house. This to divine Ulysses' house she sent, To try her best mean how she might content Mournful Penelope, and make relent The strict addiction in her to deplore. This idol, like a worm that less or more Contracts or strains her, did itself convey, Beyond the wards or windings of the key, Into the chamber, and above her head Her seat assuming, thus she comforted Distress'd Penelope: "Doth sleep thus seize Thy pow'rs, affected with so much dis ease? The Gods, that nothing troubles, will not see Thy tears nor griefs, in any least degree, Sustain'd with cause; for they will guard thy son Safe to his wish'd and native mansión, Since he is no offender of their states, And they to such are firmer than their fates." The wise Penelope receiv'd her thus, Bound with a slumber most delicious, And in the port of dreams: "O sister, why Repair you hither, since so far off lie Your house and household? You were never here Before this hour, and would you now give cheer To my so many woes and miseries, Affecting fitly all the faculties My soul and mind hold, having lost before A husband, that of all the virtues bore The palm amongst the Greeks, and whose renown So ample was that fame the sound hath blown Through Greece and Argos to her very heart? And now again a son that did convert My whole pow'rs to his love, by ship is gone; A tender plant, that yet was never grown To labour's taste, nor the commerce of men; For whom more than my husband I complain. And lest he should at any suff'rance touch, Or in the sea, or by the men so much Estrang'd to him that must his consorts be, Fear and chill tremblings shake each joint of me. Besides, his danger sets on foes profess'd To way lay his return, that have address'd Plots for his death." The scarce discerned Dream said: "Be of comfort, nor fears so extreme Let thus dismay thee. Thou hast such a mate attending thee, As some, at any rate, would wish to purchase, For her pow'r is great. Minerva pities Thy delight's defeat, whose grace has sent me To foretell thee these. If thou," said she, "be of the Goddess, And heardst her tell thee these, thou mayst as well From her tell all things else. Deign then to tell, If yet the man to all misfortunes born My husband lives, and sees the sun adorn The darksome earth, or hides his wretched head In Pluto's house, and lives amongst the dead." "I will not," she replied, "my breath exhale In one continued and perpetual tale. Lives he, or dies he? 'Tis a filthy use To be in vain and idle speech profuse." This said, she through the key hole of the door Vanish'd again into the open blore. Icarius' daughter started from her sleep, And joy's fresh humour her lov'd breast did steep, When now so clear, in that first watch of night, She saw the seen dream vanish from her sight. The Wooers' ship the sea's moist waves did ply, And thought the prince a haughty death should die. There lies a certain island in the sea, 'Twixt rocky Samos and rough Ithaca, That cliffy is itself, and nothing great, Yet holds convenient havens that two ways Let ships in and out, call'd Asteris, And there the Wooers hope to make their massacre. End of the Fourth Book, Part II.